adventure getting close to Bigfoot. As I said in a video or two back, the Bigfoot sighting reports are coming in at just an unbelievable rate. I have never had as many reports as I am receiving over the last couple of months. Well, actually, since the first of the year, it seemed like things have just opened up with Bigfoot, and he's just being seen everywhere, all over the southeast. Not only the southeast, across the United States. I have received reports from several states out west of Bigfoot sightings and that type of stuff. But what I want to tell you about on this one, I want to do as many of the individual sightings as I can. Seems like I can go into a little bit more detail, and some folks say, well, you go into too much detail sometimes, and I guess I do. But anyway, I just want to let you know what's going on here with Bigfoot, and try to tell as much of the sighting as I can get into the particular time that we have on each video. Anyway, a few days ago, I was in the grocery store in new site, and if you're ever looking for me and you have like this gentleman did, and you have a sighting that you want to tell, chances are sometime during the day you'll catch me in the grocery store, at the gas station, or down at the dollar store one. I usually make my round down through there, and I have some very good friends in all three places that keep me informed of Bigfoot sightings or panther sightings or all type of paranormal sightings that they come across down there, and I want to let them know that I very much appreciate them taking time to tell me their sighting reports whenever they do catch me down there. But anyway, what this particular sighting was, here a few years ago, all up and down the river, from the dam up at Cragford, I believe is where the dam is located at Cragford. It's right below Wedowee. This particular dam created Lake Wedowee. But anyway, after the dam was created and everything, people began buying riverfront lots all down through the river, and I'm not sure how far they go down. If they go all the way to Lake Martin, which is Alexander City, Dadeville area, I'm not sure. But a lot of people who own land down through there have now built houses or cabins or camps. A lot of people just have camps down through there. But anyway, this particular sighting happened at one of the camps. I'm not sure if he has a cabin on his campsite down there or not. We didn't take time, and he didn't mention it that day. We didn't take a whole lot of time on the area down there. I did go on down there with him later on and made some pictures, which I will show you in just a few minutes to kind of give you a better idea of what I'm talking about. But what happened, he was at his camp one day, and he said he always went down there maybe 2 or 3, 4 times a week, started to check on things to make sure nobody had been down to the camp and vandalized it or anything like that. And sometimes he and his wife just like to go down there. But on this particular day, he and his dogs had just drove down to the camp to just check on everything to see if everything was okay. And he said he had been there for just a few minutes, and he had walked down near the edge of the river, and he said way off in the distance, of course he could hear the logging crews, the skidders and the trucks and the stuff like that. That's over in the woods, which here's a picture of that right now. This is pretty close. Actually, this picture, I made it in Zana, because where he was telling that the logging was going on was down a road that I actually couldn't get down, and I didn't want to meet a log truck coming out a little dirt road as if I was going down there in that little car that I have now. But anyway, this is very similar to what was going on, probably a mile or maybe 2 miles from the river where this man's camp is located. Anyway, that's just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, the logging and the extensive, massive logging that's going on in this part of Alabama right now. We'll talk about that in another video. But anyway, he said he had been down there for a little while, and he and the dogs were just sort of running around, and he'd been throwing a stick a time or two for the dogs to chase, and said he was just sort of checking things out, relaxing, just having a good time down there. And he said over on a hill, he heard 2 wood knocks, and said when he did, he immediately stopped walking to where he could hear better and to see if he heard them again. And he said it wasn't very long till he actually heard 2 wood knocks again. And so he said, so then he got his dogs up there to where he could get hold of them to keep them from running around and making a racket to where he couldn't hear it. He said it was very faint wood knocks. They were like they were way off in the distance, and you couldn't hear them real well. But anyway, he wound up putting the dogs back in the truck so he wouldn't have to hear their running or barking whenever they were having a good time or that type of stuff. But he said he stood there for maybe 30 minutes listening, and said he heard like two wood knocks over a period of this 30 minutes several different times. And he said he remembered there was a couple of times that he actually heard three wood knocks. But he said they all seemed to be coming from pretty much the same area of this little hill across the river. But anyway, he said that was one day that he just heard wood knocks. So a few days later, he goes back down there to, like I said, to check on his camp, and if he had a cabin or whatever down there, I'm sure he was checking on it. But anyway, he said he had walked. You had to get down there. You had to go down a little dirt road a little ways, and then he has a place that he usually leaves his truck, and then he just sort of walks over the campsite area down there, which is probably about an acre or so. Maybe not that big, maybe a little bit more. I'm not a very good judge on size of land, but anyway, they have like family reunions or birthday parties and stuff like that. It's a pretty good sized little area to where a lot of people can get down there at one time, like with some of the gatherings that they've had down there. Let me get back to the story. He said that this next time that he went down there, said he heard something moving around in the brush on the other side of the river. And said he looked and looked the best he could, said after hearing the wood knocks and of course seeing some of the videos that we've got on YouTube about signs and sounds to look for or listen for whenever you're out in the woods for Bigfoot. He said that went through his mind. Well, maybe a Bigfoot had been chased out of the woods over where it lived, where all the logging was going on. But anyway, he said he kept hearing something move around over there, and he said one time he heard a large branch or a limb break, and you know the sound that a large limb will make in the woods. It makes a deep sound whenever it cracks, and he said he heard that, but said then he didn't hear anything else. He continued to hear some moving around over there, so it led him to think that it could possibly be a Bigfoot across the river watching him while he was trying to watch the Bigfoot. He only heard the limb break one time, but he walked around there for a little while. Anyway, he went on and left that afternoon. A few days later, he comes back. Okay, he's still walking around, and he said he really didn't have Bigfoot on his mind that day. He was just sort of walking around, and said the dogs were running again, and that, as he always did, a little limb laying there on the ground or a stick, he would throw for the dogs, and of course they would go chase it and bring it back. And he said they had walked all the way to the end of his particular lot down there, or campsite, whatever you want to call it. I'm not sure of the exact realty terminology. I guess I need to ask one of the local realtors what these campsites or whatever on the river. Anyway, that's not important. We'll go on to something else. We'll go on to what was happening. Anyway, he said they had walked all the way to the edge of the campsite down there, where it became back a wooded area again. And he said they had sort of started walking back toward the truck, and said he was probably 100 so yards from the truck, and said the dogs were up that way toward the truck, ready to get back in, I guess, to go home. And said he was just taking his time walking up through there, just enjoying the day here. It's been kind of some warm weather for February, especially warm for February this year. February is usually a real cold month here in Alabama, but he said he was just enjoying the afternoon, and it seemed like a fall afternoon out there. And he said as he was about 100 or so yards from the truck, he heard this large tree limb break, sounded right like it was just right on the edge of the river. And he said before he could turn around, he said this large limb hit the water, hit the river, made a big splash. And he said as he was trying to turn around, whenever he heard the crack or the limb break, he said that's when he started turning around. But he said by the time he got turned around, the limb was already in the water, and as I said, with a big splash, and then it began to float. And he said he looked at it as it was going down the river, said it was way out in the, said it was a good ways out into the river. not like halfway across the river or anything, but he said it was a good ways out into the river, and said he was looking at it and said he would estimate this limb to have been at least 4 to 6 inches in diameter. And he said it just went floating on down the river. And there was no other ripples that he noticed going back to the bank, like where a complete tree had maybe just fell down. Sometimes trees will die and just fall over sometime. But he said he didn't believe that's what it was. That he believed that this limb was actually broken off of something out there and thrown into the river. So he sort of began to get a little uneasy feeling, I guess, there, because it went back through his mind now that maybe this was a Bigfoot throwing a large limb like this at him. And he turned around and went and got back in his truck and went on. Of course, he said he never saw a Bigfoot or anything, but I said, of course, it crossed his mind that somehow this large limb landed out in the river, and it was real quick. But from the time that he heard it crack till he tried to turn around, it was already in the river. So that was pretty quick getting it in there. About 2 days later, he was back at the camp again, and this pretty much same thing happens again. He says he has walked to the far end of the campsite. Said he's sort of keeping an eye out across the river today, and said he thought he had heard something rattling in the bush out there, and said he thought he heard a grunt or a loud, deep grunt a couple of times. But he said maybe it was a deer, but I don't know if when deers grunt, if they grunt all the time or if they only grunt whenever they're in rut or whatever. But he said what he heard moving around in the brush out there across the river was sounded much heavier than a deer would whenever it would be walking through. But he said as he was walking back pretty much in about the same place again, he said he heard another crack where a large limb sounded like it had been broken off a tree. And he said whatever this was this time, said it was a large piece of wood went into the river. He said it was a very loud splash, 3 or 4 times louder than what it had been the first time. And he said when he heard it, he was turning around again and said he saw the big splash in the water. And he said a very large log went floating down the river. And he said that it would have been every bit of 12 inches in diameter. He said it looked like a tree that was probably dead and just it got broken in two or something. But anyway, what I want to do after he told me about it, here were some pictures of the side of the river that we actually made over there that day. I'll try to put some up while I'm telling the story and everything. But anyway, after he told me what he was telling me there at the grocery store, of course, we walked on outside to his truck, and he asked did I want to go down there and look around to see if I saw any signs of Bigfoot, in which I told him, yeah, we sure would. And the following pictures are some signs that we found very close to his campsite, and I want to show you those right quick. Okay, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull up each picture, and I'll tell you a little something about it. I have, of course, the pictures have numbers, and I'm going to call the numbers out to Dorothy, who edits and puts together the videos here and everything. And if she can, she'll cut the numbers and stuff out, so you won't have to listen to that. But I give reference so she'll know which one that I'm talking about, so she can pull it up in the order that I'm talking about them. So here we go. It actually we passed this place on the way to this gentleman's camp. This was actually Zana, where you can see the type of logging that's going on over there. I know logging has to be done on certain land and stuff. My only problem is I just hate to see the hardwood forest go. Here's another picture of the loaded log trucks with Zana, the trees of Zana. Okay, as we neared his camp, of course, we found this, and there's a sign on that tree. And if Dorothy can blur that out, would be real good. But what we noticed here was this limb or this pole was leaned up against this tree, and it would be hard for this thing to fall and actually land like this. Let me give you a little bit better view of this particular tree as soon as I can move on to the next picture. This is picture 013, you can see how the tree kind of leans to the side in its natural growth. And if a limb had fallen out of that tree and come down the side of this big pine, it wouldn't have hung up like that. Something pushed this pole up there and made it stay in this particular position. A little further on down the road, we saw this bent tree. This was just right off the side of a little dirt road. Okay, let's go to the next one. This is another bent tree we found going on down the road a little ways further. This is another tree we found a little further way on down this road going toward the river. But at this particular bent tree right there, right directly across the road, was what appeared to be a trail. This is photo 17. As you can see, it looks like a little trail goes out through the woods there. And there on the bank, I could tell, and maybe you can tell in the photo here, the leaves look like they had been disturbed or rustled up, where something large had been walking across there. We didn't see any footprints or anything because it hadn't been long rained, and of course the road, the gravel road, was hard. And let me go on to the next picture. Okay, now as we neared the river, here was another tree that looked like that it grew sort of bent over, but here was another pole that was leaned up against it, and it was just barely balanced right on the edge. This is just another angle of that same tree to where you can tell how this pole appears to just be laid up against that tree. I don't think if it had fallen out of the tree from a height that it would have landed like this without bouncing or breaking. And there is a stump down at the bottom of the ground, but it's not the stump that goes with this particular tree that's leaning up against this bent over tree. This was another tree that appeared to have been pushed over or in the process of being bent. And it was very close to the river where we were headed that afternoon. Okay, this is photo 001. You can see a very good bent tree in the background right here. And okay, and I guess that was it for this Alabama adventure. The Bigfoot throwing logs in the river. We'll have to think of a good title to call this particular video. I hope you enjoyed it. I appreciate the man taking time that afternoon to carry me down there, and we sort of checked it out. We did find some evidence of Bigfoot being in that area, such as bent trees, and I do believe that was a trail through the woods. It just looked too wide open and not to be a trail, and it looked much too wide for like a deer or coyote or something like that, because if you will notice from the ground up, this particular trail was clear, like where something wide like Bigfoot was able to walk through, and if there were any limbs in his way, he certainly broke them out of the way and had him a good trail down through there. But anyway, that was today's Alabama adventure, and as I said, I hope you did enjoy it. And with all that being said, as I always do, I guess I would like to say hello to my granddaughter Madison. I'd also like to tell you that the Alabama Bigfoot Society is run completely out of pocket. And if you would like to make a donation, that would be very much appreciated. All you have to do is to go on our website, AlabamaBigfootSociety.com, and on the front page you'll find a place where you can make that donation if you're in a position to where you can and would like to. If you like these videos, I hope you give us a like. If you like what we're doing down here with our paranormal investigations and our Bigfoot investigation, then I would like for you to subscribe to the channel. And with all that being said, I guess I'll be looking for you next time on the next Alabama adventure, getting close to Bigfoot.